the final closeouts and readying the rocket for launch. So pending the successful completion of our closeout activities today, we'll be ready to go for a launch tomorrow morning, or tomorrow. I guess it's 1:32, so tomorrow afternoon. The team will be in early. Like we're on station around 5:30 in the morning to get ready for a launch just after lunchtime. And with that, we'll hand it over to Sarah.
Thank you. So the Wallops launch range here is responsible for ensuring a safe flight of the vehicle and a clear path for the Antares to launch through. And so earlier today we had a launch readiness review. That was our final review before we proceed into those launch operations. If you go to my first graphic here, I'll talk about our Wallops launch range support. So we have a host of radars and telemetry antennas and command antennas, as well as many other types of instrumentation that will be supporting the launch here locally at Wallops, and then also at our downrange site in Bermuda. All of those instrumentation pieces have been tested, verified, configured, and validated, ready to support the launch operation tomorrow afternoon. My next item that I wanted to talk about is the safe flight that I mentioned earlier. We have also worked with the FAA, with the U.S. Navy VACAPES and the U.S. Coast Guard to put out our notices to airmen and notice to mariners for the launch operations tomorrow and throughout the week if we need that, to ensure that the ocean space and airspace is clear for launch operations. My next graphic, moving into the weather, which I think everyone is patiently waiting to see. So this is our weather forecast for tomorrow. Currently at launch time, we're predicting that it'll be mostly sunny. The winds will kind of be out of the southwest, very light for us being right off the Atlantic Ocean here. Temperature still very chilly in the low 30s. And with all of that, our probability of a favorable launch conditions tomorrow are up at 95%. So tomorrow looks like a very good weather day for our launch operations here. And my last graphic that I have will just show, with the nice weather conditions and with the size of this rocket, the visibility of it during the day tomorrow. So you can see viewers all along the East Coast there will have a chance to catch a glimpse of it in the sky when we do launch tomorrow in the early afternoon. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the host.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Okay, let's take questions. We'll start here in the audience, and we'll go to the phone line. And as a reminder, if you're watching from home, you can use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Let's start here in the middle.
Doug Money, team.
Go ahead,
Doug Money, TMC. Two questions for Frank. Number one, how many do-overs does NASA get for pausing a particular launch under contract? It's got to cost you some money to roll back the rocket back and forth each time.
How much money do we give to NASA, did you say?
No. How many times? All right. How many times within the contract does NASA get a do-over or a pause or a stop?
Because that's not specified in the contract. It's a fixed price contract, and so if we incur additional cost due to NASA changing requirements or changing schedule or whatever, then we would go back and negotiate with them what who would bear that cost. But it's not set a specific number of times in the contract.
Okay. Second question, can you contrast the cold weather we're having here with some of the other launch sites around the world? I mean, Florida might not be too happy with this type of weather, but at Bacanor, they're probably laughing at us because it's too warm.
Well, you said it, Bacanor gets even colder than this, and they still launch. Florida hasn't launched very often in cold weather, and it hasn't always gone well. So they're used to the temperate and hot temperatures for launching down there. We designed the rocket to operate down to at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and so we feel comfortable that we can operate in these conditions. The extended sub-freezing temperatures are something we look at very carefully to make sure we understand what the impact of that is. And so we will look at the temperature profile over the 48 hours leading up to launch to make sure we're comfortable from an analysis standpoint with proceeding. But so far everything looks good, right,
So
Mike?
far
Do you want to add
everything's
to that?
No, I think the cold temperatures and the extended cold temperatures, definitely present some unique challenges to us as far as controlling the temperatures of critical components. But you'll note that the fairing, the aft bay, the intertank bay, were all of the critical components. Those are all conditioned. It's really a challenge of making sure the air conditioning systems can keep up with the weather and keep those components at their temperatures that are within their qualified design constraints. So far, for the most part, that's gone well. We're looking at a couple of things over the course of today, but expecting good results from that. And actually tomorrow will be a little less challenging day than today was. And if things go the way they're predicted to go, we're feeling pretty good that we've got control of the situation.
The other aspect we paid a lot of attention to was crew safety, ground crew safety, and last night they had pretty high winds and very low temperatures, so wind chill was a factor, and so we had to make sure that people really were prepared to operate in those conditions, and that we kept them warm, and that we didn't push them to a pace that was unrealistic or unreasonable in those conditions.
Ken Kramer.
Hi, Ken Kramer for Universe Today. Question for Frank and probably Mike. As you mentioned, it's been a big week for space flight. SpaceX just launched yesterday, and they're one of your biggest competitors. And I wonder, do you think you can compete with them on price? Are you going to be upgrading the Antares rocket in any way? Because you must be feeling a lot of heat from them. And you were looking to get, I know, new customers when we talked at the September launch. Can you give us an update on that? Thanks.
Sure. Yes, of course, they are one of the competitors, and they've been very successful in the last couple of years in developing new versions of their rocket. We also are working on new versions of our rocket, and in fact, by the fourth CRS mission, we will have an upgraded version that will fly more payload. We're also looking at long range, what the configuration of the Antares will be, both from an engine standpoint and from upper stage standpoint. So we've got plans in work that it's not appropriate for me to talk too much about them, but we certainly are looking at that. And we are negotiating with people for other payloads besides the Cygnus spacecraft, and intend to fly more than just cargo out of Wallops here. So we do have big plans for it. And as I said, SpaceX should be congratulated on their launch. Another reason we're actually happy about that is because we built the spacecraft that flew on that, the TICOM 6, and so we were very happy to see that delivered to space, and it's performing very well. Orbital has a broad portfolio of business, not just the launch operations that we conduct. We build a lot of spacecraft, we build national security systems, and we have lots of big plans for the future.
Tarek.
Thank you. Tarek Malik with Space.com. And I have a question for Mike. You mentioned the frigid temperatures at the pad, and I'm wondering, has that cold made you kind of scale down the number of folks you have out there? Do they all go out there with, hot chocolate and marshmallows, something like that? How have you been keeping them warm to maintain the focus you need for a launch, given the last couple of ones were kind of during more temperate times?
No marshmallows before ignition.
Yeah. Keep the marshmallows off the pad. It's as Frank said, it's a combination of things. We definitely are making sure they're outfitted with the right clothes. For example, last night we had a truck close by running with the heater going to make sure that the guys, they weren't required to be out on the pad 100% of the time. So when they weren't there, they were in a nice warm environment. We're also making sure we're doing frequent, crew shifts so that we can keep people cycling in and out of the cold and staying warm. So, I'd say it's presented a logistical challenge, but we've been able to successfully work through it. And I've, personally was out there yesterday, and the team was in good spirits, and I think we were successful keeping everybody warm and safe and no frostbite. And team did a really good job managing that particular challenge.
Okay, let's take a few social media questions.
First question comes from Twitter user Tyler Waldrop. How large of a window do you have before you have to recycle the payload time-wise if you have to cancel tomorrow?
If we have to cancel tomorrow, we can probably go 2 more times with a good chance of preserving most of the science, if not all of it. If we go beyond that, we would have to talk to NASA about whether it was more critical to roll back and replace the payloads, which would take a couple of weeks probably, or whether we would just preclude conducting some of the experiments. We can launch quite a bit later than this week from an operations standpoint, and the spacecraft can loiter for a long time before we have to rendezvous with the station. But the science experiments are what are driving our schedule right now.
Next question comes from Twitter user Marcia Smith. Why do frigid temps require a launch delay? What specifically is affected, and what is the temperature threshold for launch?
Hi, Marcia. The temperatures affect a number of pieces of equipment, and I'll let Mike get a little more specific about that. But we have to pay a lot of attention to precipitation in conjunction with the low temperatures. If we have ice form around any of the structure, we have to worry about whether it's getting into crevices or interfaces and causing expansion, or whether it's going to cause a debris problem on the pad when we ignite the rocket, or cause hazardous operations for the people that are trying to work around the rocket. And Mike, I'm sure, wants to elaborate on that.
Well, maybe just a little bit. We have design constraints pretty much for every component on the vehicle that based on where it's been designed, analyzed, and tested to operate. As I mentioned previously, we've got environmental control systems that control the temperatures inside the critical cavities inside the rocket, and we've got instrumentation all over that allow us to see where those temperatures are relative to where those launch constraints are. So to the specific question, I think the most critical one we're monitoring is a 20-degree ambient constraint that we've got that's based on some of our fairing separation components, and again, it's based on where those components were designed and tested. There are other constraints that are less about the ambient environment and more about how our environmental control systems are controlling the internal environment inside the fairing. But there's a lot of them, and we're looking at all of them.
Robert.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com with a question for Frank. I know you've named the spacecraft for Gordon Fullerton. Is his family here for the launch? And can you talk a little bit about why honor him in this way?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Robert. I should have mentioned that in my remarks. We did mention it in an earlier press conference, but yes, this one, in the tradition we established with the first demo mission, has been named in honor of C. Gordon Fullerton, Gordo, as many of us know him, who passed away within the last year. Gordo was a long-time astronaut, flew in space 3 times, and also was a test pilot at Dryden. And one of his tasks there was to fly the B-52 and drop a variety of launch vehicles and test vehicles off of the pylon on the bottom of that. The Pegasus rocket was Orbital's first commercial venture into launching payloads into space, and it was deployed from the B-52, and the pilot for that mission was Gordo. And so it's and many of our missions, and so we had a long-term relationship with Gordon, and he was very important to the company, and many people knew him well. So we knew him and Marie. Gordo was actually very happy when we transitioned from the B-52 to the L-1011, because then he didn't have to fly the heavy; he could fly an F-18 chase plane and have a lot more fun. And he was a great pilot. We had his family visit us last November. And exchanged a number of items with them. and also gave them a chance to see what Orbital does and why we were honoring their Gordo. They are not able to be here today, unfortunately, but I know that they're watching, and I want to send my best wishes to them and tell them we're going to take very good care of the SSC Gordon Fullerton.